Let's go back to the Winchester Mansion. On today's episode of Holly Weird Paranormal, we revisit the Winchester Mansion with our special guest, writer and haunted historian Christiane Franke, who actually used to work as a tour guide in the mansion. Let's sit down with Christi as we learn a little more about Sarah Winchester, her true intentions on continuing to build the elaborate home that she once lived in. And was the home truly built by ghosts? Speaking of ghosts, is the mansion truly haunted? Well, according to Christi, it is. And we sit down to figure out who or what is actually lurking throughout the hallways and corridors of the Winchester Mystery House. So let's get Holly Weird with Christi as we revisit the Winchester Mansion. Hey guys, welcome to another long-awaited episode of Holly Weird Paranormal Podcast. We are your hosts, Tammy Merhab Chavez.
Hello, I'm Bryce Mitchell-Williams.
And I know it's been long-awaited, emphasis on long, because the whole month of February has been, Bryce, we were just talking about this, has been a month of transition. You are entering this new chapter as not only a single man, but a single free man who is going to venture out into the world now that you've left your job.
I literally, the other day, it's so funny that you mentioned that. I walked out because your girl's 34, so I've certainly passed my Saturn return, but I walked out to my roommate who's much more into astrology, and I was like, can Saturn return happen late? What is happening right now in my chart? She's going through the transition. Yeah.
A lot has happened, in February 2 of 2022 for a lot of people. So I'm glad that you're putting yourself first and taking care of you.
Yeah, it's a little crazy. It's a little scary, but it's the difference of when you're in a place where you can see the path in front of you and it just feels the same every day over and over and over, and you feel so trapped by that, into now everything in front of me just feels like possibility, which is much, much scarier, of course, but exciting, and hopefully all good things. And there's always OnlyFans if it doesn't work out, so
that's true.
See how it goes.
True. Bryce Mitchell-Williams, OnlyFans, all right. He might show his feet. Who knows?
I'm gonna have to pay people to subscribe. That's how that's gonna work. Please, I'll pay you.
Well, I might have to do an OnlyFans too, because drum roll, please. Charlie and I have qualified for a home loan. We're in the process of looking for property in Los Angeles. So,
oh my god! Oh, bro, you're gonna need a seance. You're gonna need a Ouija board. You're gonna need a priest. You're gonna need
everything.
All of it.
I need all the good vibes. I will tell you this.
Yeah.
This could take a whole episode, but I'm going to break it down to this, what we've learned. What they say about LA of being a land of smoke and mirrors is exactly how the real estate market is. It is a land of smoke and mirrors. The houses are smoke and mirrors. They've been perfectly staged because I'm sure the stagers worked for Fox or Paramount. What we've learned are red flags is if your neighbors have more cameras installed in front of their house, more cameras in the paparazzi, that's a red flag. If there's more furniture in the front yard than inside the house, that's another red flag. So it's been a little disheartening because of the lack of homes that we can afford out here, but we're gonna do it and we're gonna make it work.
Hell yeah!
But that has been our dream, and we've been saving every single cent and sacrifice.
Oh, I'm so proud. I'm so happy.
Thank you. So that's what we've been doing. That's why it's taking us a month to come out with an episode, because all of us have been busy. But speaking about
your plates are full.
Our plates are really full, but we scooched a little room out. Speaking of real estate, the Winchester House is quite a big real estate, guys. Speaking of the Winchester House and our special guest, we're doing an episode called The Winchester Revisited. Guys, I want to introduce you to our special guest. We're going to call her Christi, but she goes by Christiane Franke. I just had to say it that way with heavy emphasis right there. But If you have been following us on Instagram, we posted a TikTok that she had done not too long ago about her time at the Winchester. If you haven't, we'll repost it soon. But Christi has worked at the Winchester, and she has so many receipts of experiences at the Winchester, along with working there and what she's been kind of trained to tell the public. We covered the Winchester Mansion back in episode 19, guys. We try to cover a lot of the truth to see past the legend. But let's leave it to Christi to walk us through that whole excursion of the Winchester. Christi, welcome to the podcast.
Yay! Thank you
guys.
for being here.
Yes. Now here I have your little bio. I want to read a little blurb about Christi. Christi is a writer and historian from San Jose. She's a lover of both the normal and the paranormal. That's why we have her on our podcast. She owns the store Aunt Evie's Wardrobe, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which sells vintage fashions and moonlights as a bookseller on the weekends. Christi worked at the Winchester Mystery House for 2 seasons and fell in love with the reality of Sarah Winchester, her eccentric home, and the spirits who watch the crowds passing through. I love that. Christi, we're ready for you, girl. Tell us everything. Tell us about your time working there, how you got this fascinating job, and
Well, it wasn't hard actually to get the job for a tour guide position, and because I had studied history in college and had an MA in history and in music history, but still history, and because I was a teacher, they were like, "Great, you know how to talk to people, you know about history, you know about Mrs. Winchester a little bit,
right? You know how to put words together."
Oh yeah. I got the job. I got the costume, and the costume was the best part, even though it was like
freaking right, girl.
Man-made fabric, so it was like wrapping yourself in plastic every time you got dressed. It was
so
hot in that house.
I can imagine.
Oh God.
Yeah, they had us in this wonderful kind of. I mean, the uniforms were amazing. They had us in these wonderful kind of wild Western, like heavy walking skirts and long sleeved, high collared black and white blouses. And you could kind of accessorize it. You could do what you wanted with it. So I added a belt with like a chatelaine so that I could carry my little bag with my phone and my lipstick and
smart,
and then I would, styled my hair in a certain way and added like a little bow tie. And, it was really fun. But it was hot. And
I can imagine.
And I worked there in the summers. California summers are very warm.
After the June gloom, we go up in temperature.
Yeah. And it gets, it can get up to like 106 in the Bay Area. So it's
That's literally the only time I would pray for a cold spot. Like, please just let me get haunted, please.
Right. So I was having a fan that I would carry with me, and I would be like, lady.
Oh,
gentlemen.
yes, fan. Yes, fan.
Ooh, can we get another one? Can we get another one?
And I'm like, oh, no. You want one. You want a fan.
You want a fan. Yes.
Die. It won't be the ghosts that get you. The tour is like a mile and a half. You walk up and down the house. Now, the Winchester house is not hard to get through. That's the first misconception that everybody makes, is that there's lots of twisting, creeping hallways and doors that you will get lost in. You cannot get lost in the Winchester house. Like, you won't get lost. All of the stairways lead to out. And so I always said, if in the off chance that you get separated from the group, which you won't because it's impossible, but if you wander off in this house, just start walking down. Just literally walk to, find a staircase and go down it. And you'll get out. Because the whole house is just interconnected. It's just a house, And my favorite part of the training was that they give you a house map and off you go. See you in 2 hours. Have fun.
Now, you see you in 2 hours. Would it take people 2 days because they got lost, or?
No. It was just to get to know the house. So you would walk through, you would go the tour route, then you would go through,
cool.
Past the velvet ropes, and then you could go up into the attics and you just walk and you would run into tours. And when you did that, you were asked to just kind of step into like a side room and let the tour go by, and like, try not to let them see you because you weren't in uniform yet. You were usually just looked like a tourist.
Right.
You had your badge, which had your name on it, and so once you had the badge, you could go anywhere you wanted.
Wow.
And so that was actually a lot of fun. And you very quickly learned that every single thing in that house makes perfect sense. Like there is only one staircase that doesn't go anywhere. And that's because it went to it was part of an addition to the house that was the barn originally. So it had gone up to a hayloft. And when she connected the house to the barn and turned it into an office and a bedroom, she just closed the floor. She just refloored it, closed off the top of the staircase, and moved the staircase over here. And so that staircase is still there because they didn't need to take it out. They just kind of left it as like there it is. Maybe we'll use it again someday.
There's so much to unload with this house. Like aside from just the layout and the size. I'm sure a lot of people are wondering, well, why does she build staircases to nowhere?
Yeah. That's a question that I've been getting a lot since I posted that video. I was like, well, why did she make the house the way that she did if she wasn't, trying to confuse the spirits? And I'm like, she had a hobby, a passion.
Right.
It wasn't the only house that she built. There's actually another one in Los Altos, which is in the north part of San Jose. Very ritzy, well-to-do neighborhood. It was a farmhouse that she bought 120 acres of land that is now Los Altos.
That's true. That's in Mary's book. That's right.
Yeah. And it's called the Merriman Winchester House because she bought it for her sister Isabel and her husband. And it was like a 4-room cottage. And Sarah basically said, what do you want to do to it? And Sarah and Isabel said, what do you think we should do? And the result is this really nice Victorian, like not a mansion, it's not huge, but it's like a big house. Like when you think of a Victorian house, it's that.
It's that house.
And it's and you can live in it. It just sold for a couple $1 million to
only a couple million. Only a couple million. I mean,
right?
It's only chump change.
$1 million to some bear, some like Google exec or somebody.
That is so true. Sarah Winchester was very close to her sister Isabel, and that is another misconception that we'll head into. A lot of misconceptions about Sarah Winchester that we brought up too in episode 19. And I will bring up this book too. I really, both Christy and I suggest that you read Captive of the Labyrinth by Mary Jo Ignoffo, because she really dissects and really unearths a lot of truth of the life and success and progress of Sarah Winchester, even like after her passing, like what people went wrong. But that was another thing. Like people were like, oh, she was just a woman who lived alone, a crazy woman who lived alone in this house. But no, she had family and she had her sister.
Oh yeah.
Well,
she had her family and she had her staff.
Yes.
And the staff were often like family because she very much encouraged the kids to play on the estate.
That's so sad.
So there are 2 families in particular who are still, one of my colleagues has actually spoken to the descendants of these people, the Nishihara family. And the parents had emigrated from Japan and they were hired on by Mrs. Winchester. Oh, wow. And they had 3 children. And the little girl, Ida, her middle name was Ida Winchester.
Wow.
She was Ida Winchester Nishihara. And it was not uncommon for her to play in the front garden and to like ride her trike. And the foreman, he lived in a house that's still there. It's at the back of the property. You can see it when you're walking around. His 3 boys also grew up on the estate and they would play. She paid for all of the children's schooling, all doctor visits. And they didn't call her, we're not sure if they actually did call her Aunt Sarah or Miss Sarah. But they spoke with her familiarly. Like she'd go out into the garden and she had a really beautiful garden, and the kids would just come up to her and chat with her because she was Mrs. Winchester. So she wasn't that, she was very private and she didn't like to entertain. So she didn't. And So people think that she's this recluse because of that. And because she always wore mourning, which wasn't unusual at the time.
Especially
by
for
the
her
1920s,
age.
it was a little old-fashioned to wear all black mourning. Constantly, but like you'd see old ladies doing it, so it wasn't weird in that era.
I wear all black sometimes. I wear all black. So
yeah, right.
I have
and you know,
Sarah
it's
Winchester.
a vibe.
It
is a vibe.
I see cosplayers doing the full Victorian mourning look, and I'm like, you know, it's really fun to wear. Like you've got veils and flounces and fruit, and like once you know how to move in those clothes, they're not hard to wear.
Just as long as I don't look like La Llorona, I'm fine. Like I am okay.
There you go.
Now
that's why I stay away from children.
Want to, right?
Yeah, unless you want to scare children.
Now you released a TikTok not too long ago, and it's one of the reasons why we have you here too. Aside from your fascination with the paranormal, you called out some things that you know that your job was telling you to do. Can you talk about that? So
I was in a kind of a mood because
we love it. We love it.
So my best friend has been my roommate for the last couple of years, and she got a new job and she moved to Oregon, and we were up in the Winchester area because she wanted to buy a T-shirt as a souvenir to remember the house by. And I worked there before I left right before the pandemic, and when the pandemic hit, they laid off the entire staff. Like only management was left. So like 98% of the staff, the groundskeepers, everybody was just gone. Jeez. And so I was mad because of that. And then they had also got rid of the rifle museum, which is one of the reasons that a lot of people came to the house. There's this rifle museum that had a copy of every single gun that the Winchester Company had ever made.
Wow.
And so you had a lot of collectors and a lot of people who are interested in that side of the house.
And they got rid of that?
The rifle museum. And they got rid of that, and they turned it into an escape room.
Oh, come on now.
Yeah, and so that and
look,
so
nobody loves an escape room more than me, but like,
and it was like
maybe not on like historical sites. Like maybe there's a line not to be crossed.
Yeah, and so everyone was real upset about that. Like nobody was happy about that, but you know, the management was just like, oh, more money. And so, and then when you walk into the estate, you walk into not a building that Mrs. Winchester built, but like something that got thrown up in the 1920s after it got turned into a tourist attraction. And it's just like this massive gift shop. And it was all just comics of Mrs. Winchester holding a candle and like walking through this dark house. And I just kind of lost my temper. And I went outside and I stood in the corner. And now because they're charging you to go in the gardens because of the pandemic. So it used to be that you could go and walk around the house and the gardens without paying. And now they charge you like $40 to do that.
Wow.
And I kind of went outside and I recorded that video and posted it and didn't think anything less or anything more of it. I was like, you know, I get maybe like 50 views on my videos. And
no, it blew up.
No, that one went nuts.
It's
like
TikTok.
It's TikTok.
Yeah.
That is the joy. Like as stupid as it sounds, that is sort of the joy of TikTok. Is you're like, oh, no one will ever see this. All of a sudden, like thousands of views later, you're like, oh, okay,
yeah,
cool.
And it's like because it's true. The thing is that I said that about Mrs. Winchester. Everything that about the legend, the spiritualism, the bells, the 13s, the weirdness, the continual building 24 hours a day, that is not true. That is made up, like wholesale made up.
Oh, and people really believe in it. They
people really believe in it because there's been, at this point, it's 2022 is the year or 1922 is when she died. So it's been 100
wow.
That's been the narrative, the controlled narrative for 100 years at this point. Because the family put the house up to auction within a couple of months of Mrs. Winchester dying. They sold all of the furniture. They emptied the house out, sold all of the furniture, sold the land. Like that was a huge ranch. And now it's just San Jose. It was this huge orchard. She had apricots, walnuts, and prunes, I want to say. And she sold that. She made tons of money from the fruit, and she employed like so many hundreds of people in the valley.
Wow.
And then it's just like, and so some carny dude whose name I don't even know, like it's generally kept out of the record. Some carny dude bought it and was like, what can I do with this really weird old house? I know. We'll say that she was haunted by the ghosts of the people killed by the Winchester rifle. And she wasn't. She was a very, very wealthy woman with a hobby.
Yes.
A man writing a narrative for a woman after she died.
I know, right?
That doesn't happen. That never happens.
Never. Yeah. Especially an older woman with money and a brains and brains for business.
Well,
right.
Especially, not to be on, I was really not going to do it, but to be on my feminist rant, I already was talking to my roommate at breakfast about this, but it's this weird thing where we like punish women for the things that we celebrate in men. So if she had been a man, she would have been like in Architectural Digest. She would have been celebrated for her innovation. Like, look how like thrifty she is, like look how she's using the space, like look what she did with all these houses. But because we hate women, then it's like, oh no, this woman's, she had to be haunted. She had to be crazy.
She couldn't be just like a kind woman who was an introvert, had a hobby, and had more money than she needed.
Right.
And a couple of people have been like, well, why didn't she give it all away? And I'm like, dude, she did. She did. She gave so much money.
She was a big philanthropist. Like people didn't. People don't do their homework. Yeah, they're just fed this, and they're like, "Okay, I'll take it." Like, she was haunted.
Well, you know how you'll see the list of donors to a museum or a concert hall or something. It's always anonymous at the top. That was Mrs. Winchester. She didn't like people to know that she was, because I think. Maybe she felt that if she put her name to it, it was taking away from like the generosity of it. Like, but
like we live in a time right now, especially where if you're not documenting it, it's as if it didn't happen. And we like
it didn't happen.
Weird.
Right.
Yes, it is, and it's gross. I think, but it is that weird thing where we like sort of. Unless you're doing your philanthropy in like a flashy way, it's such a weird story. But I remember we were in the business of acting in school, and the teacher was talking about at the time Chris Pine, whom I love. Like, don't get me wrong, like he is my favorite. But at the time, he had gone to, I think it was Venezuela. I could be misremembering the country, and was working with Habitat for Humanity. And she had like a son, I think, that was very good friends with him. They had grown up together. And she was like, oh, he like called the paparazzi on himself so that they would like get photos of him like at Habitat for Humanity. And look, that was probably his publicist's decision. Like, I'm not trying to throw shade at him specifically because he's not the only one doing that. But even at the time in class, I was like, that's gross. Like, why would somebody do that? And again, I love him. It's not him. It's this industry that has people do that.
Absolutely.
His publicist probably did it. But we're so not used to people doing things anonymously, so we have to fill in that void
exactly
for them.
And like, sorry, go on.
Oh, dare I say that we're used to being, I don't know, we were used to seeing celebrities too be trying to be so relevant. We want to know what they're doing. How come they're not sharing these things with us? Or these celebrities that are like well, how come they didn't share, like they didn't donate money to this cause? They did. They just are not going to gloat about it. Well, we want to see And
the other thing about Mrs. Winchester is the legend has it, that a medium on the East Coast told her. We don't have any documented proof that she ever participated in seances or spiritualism. Like, she might have because it was super popular in the late 19th and early 20th century. Like, spiritualism was like a big thing. So the likelihood that she did attend a seance or 2 or 6 in her time, pretty high. But she didn't go to a medium. She went to a doctor because she was very ill. Her husband had died of tuberculosis, and her little daughter Annie had died within a couple of months of birth from a genetic disease. And Sarah herself was not feeling well, and so she went to a doctor, and the doctor was like, California is really warm and dry. Maybe you should give it a shot. And so she actually went to San Francisco first. And San Francisco is not warm or dry.
Neither warm nor dry.
Yeah.
You missed the assignment.
It's completely opposite.
It is now because of climate change, but like, it's
the Bay.
And so she went down to San Jose and was like, this is good. And there's nothing, they were farms. It was farms. And so she bought a farm and she bought a 7-room farmhouse and she started partying with it because she liked to build. She'd never been to college, never had any formal training, but she read a lot of books and she had a lot of ideas and she had a lot of money. Like,
right. And like, you have to fill your time with something.
Yeah.
Like you have to do something.
Yeah. And the thing is that she took care of people. That's now you do get this on the tours. I will say this, the tour guides, some of them have been there for 20, 30 years, right? The tour guides and the tour leads are like dedicated to telling as much about Mrs. Winchester that's true as they can.
Mm-hmm.
So even in the script nowadays, it's begun to reflect that. So you'll have this legend has it that Mrs. Winchester was consulted a medium who told her that she was being haunted, blah, 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 blah. So she moved out to California. And so then what the guides will do is they'll say, but the reality is we don't know why Mrs. Winchester came out to San Jose. And so you get this sort of double speak going on. Mm-hmm. And if you leave out the legend entirely, you get in trouble. And if you get in trouble too many times, you get fired.
Wow.
And so that happened to a colleague of mine who worked there about the same time that I did, but she worked year round. I only worked seasonally. That's what happened to her. She called bullshit on the escape room too, which was kind of fun. So they fired her.
Damn.
But it's I do want to say that all of the guides that I have ever met who worked at Winchester, they made sure that every new hire knew the true story. So, and it is haunted. That's the other thing is.
Yes, let's go into the ghost stories.
Yeah. Right. So I don't know if you've ever heard of the term, and I called genius loci. It's a Latin term for spirit of place. And I might be getting that pronunciation wrong. But
we are deeply not the people to ask.
No, if I've read it I've read it. I haven't like heard it said. Yeah. So I could be saying it wrong. Reader's accent. But
yes.
The spirit of the place is the idea that a place has a vibe and it has sentience. It knows. And the Winchester house, like the house itself, has that sentience. It's there. Absolutely. And it'll pay attention to you. So like when I started working there, then they said, they gave me my map and they said, off you go. You've got 2 hours. If you get lost, take a staircase down and just walk out in the dark. And all stairs lead to the exit. And I've walked around and I was like, I don't know if it's the story that I've been told my whole life or, my own perception here, but there's a vibe here. Like I'm being watched. And so I started talking to the house as I walked through. And I was like, oh, this room is so beautiful. I love these windows. Look at the stained glass. Look at the crown molding. Look at these floorboards, And I went back after my shift. I went to the staff room and I was like, so it's haunted. And everyone was like, oh yeah. It was no big deal. And they're like, oh yeah, no, the house is alive. They're like, don't touch the house. Don't mess with the house. Right. Don't hurt the house. The house will make you throw up. It will make you cry. So
tell me
but
something
not like a bad way, like in a you're hurting me kind of way.
Have people felt this? Have you seen people go through those motions?
Yeah. So my colleague Jamie, who I actually met with her yesterday to make sure I was getting all the information correct because it had been a while, she was telling me that during the last big Halloween before the pandemic, they had this new company to do something called Unhinged, which was basically the kind of a mixture of like paranormal activity and like basically any trashy horror movie that you've ever seen. Mrs. Winchester built this horrible house and then she disappeared into it. And then other people bought the house and they died horribly. Like here are the bodies.
God, per usual. Yeah.
And the house was furious, like, because it was being disrespectful. People were being super disrespectful to Mrs. Winchester. You know, this crazy old lady, here's the house. And, but windows were broken in the course of, like, so the actors everyone told them, don't abuse the house. Like, don't hit the walls. This is an old house. This is a historic house. And the guys are like, and it's alive. You know, people who don't know, you know, it's one of those if you know kind of thing. So walls were hit, floorboards were scratched, doors were scraped with stuff going through. Like the people who were brought in were not very careful with the house, and they damaged it. And so there was a couple of the guides who had been there for a while, who are, you know, sensitive to the house, would start crying randomly or get sick or have to go outside. And it was always like, did something happen? Oh yeah, a window was broken. And then it was the same. They were removing some of the windows for cleaning, for preservation, some of the stained glass windows. And nobody told the house. So it was just from the house's perspective. It was just like some people came in, they unscrewed the windows, they picked them up and they took them away. And so what Jamie did is that she walks through the house saying, I'm terribly sorry that nobody told you. We're just taking some windows off for cleaning, for preservation. We're bringing them back. You will get your windows back. And like the whole energy of the place just shifted very gently to, oh, okay, we're okay. And so it's like, it's not creepy, but it's alive. It's watching you.
I believe it. I mean, with the people that worked on it, you don't know what intentions they put in there. I'm sure they worked with a lot of love and respect, and that was absorbed in the wood. So and then like
Mrs. Winchester was someone you wanted to work for her. Like if she hired you, you were set. She paid you twice the going rate. Like straight up. Like, so whatever minimum wage was, you got double that. And that went regardless of your race or nationality. Like if you were a person who could work, she hired you.
Yeah. Which at the time is like so unheard
call her an ally. But
right. But at the time, nobody was doing that. Nobody.
Well, yeah. And the people who did were kind of extraordinary. So people went to them. And so she would pay for your room, your board. If you got married, she built you a house on the estate. If you got married, you had the opportunity, like if staff married each other, right? Because the men lived in a bunkhouse that she had like dorms for the men, and the women got to live in the house. And they had their own bedroom, a shared bathroom. And these are nice rooms. These are like bedrooms, like good sized rooms, with windows and little balconies. Like, this was a good place to live, a good place to work, 2 free meals a day. Wow. And so that immediately, because that wasn't common at all. You had to pay room and board if you lived in the house. So that would detract from your paycheck. So they're already making double and they don't have to pay rent.
Crazy.
And again, she hired, because like California has a lot of issue or past historical issue with people of color in general, but Asian people in particular, especially up in the Bay Area, they have had a hard ride pretty much from the time they started immigrating. And so if you were, Japanese, you got paid significantly less than if you were white. And she didn't do that. And like we have record of people naming their children after her.
Right.
So like Ida Winchester Nishihara, who was a little girl who was born to her Japanese parents. And then she would do things like if she bought a car, and she bought a lot of cars, she hired a mechanic for that car, and their job was to take care of that car.
That's amazing.
Crazy.
And so she just created a lot of jobs, and she put a ton of money back into the community. But she was private about it. And like all medical visits, if you had to go to the doctor, she paid your bills. Like she had more money than she needed, and she knew it.
Right.
So she used it to help people.
But these are the conversations where it's like, oh, that was just the way things were back then. Like people didn't know better. Like people did know better.
Yeah.
Because
do your bosses now do that?
Right. Like here she was doing something extraordinary, like because she was a good person.
Yeah.
Like, people knew. Right. And no one's doing that now anyway.
Right.
It's still unheard of.
Yeah. I mean, she's on the income level of like Elon Musk and Mark Zuckerberg. and you don't see them paying their employees twice the going
absolutely
rate
not.
and healthcare, you know, and schooling for your children through college.
Jeff Bezos.
She did.
Yeah.
And I can tell you for a fact that that these people have, the people we have named in the last few minutes, have been through the Winchester house, and that they have been told this to their faces, that she did this. So
yeah,
I have it on record, but no names.
Yeah.
Oh no.
Yeah.
But the public.
But there are other ghosts in the house. It's all former staff or staff's kids who have stuck around. So we've got Wheelbarrow Man, who is on the grounds and in the basement. Zach Bagans called him the man in the bowler hat, and that's not true. He's the man next to the man with the bowler hat. There's a photograph of the gardeners, and the man with the bowler hat is not the ghost.
Oh, okay.
You can Google it. It's a Winchester Mystery House gardeners photograph. And there's like 12 guys, and they're all standing around, and the gent with the mustache and the dirty apron.
Mm-hmm.
And he's funny. He'll tease the guests. Like there were some, and again, this is not my experience story. This is a story that I was told and invited to share. There were some guests in taking the basement tour, and there was like teenage girls going, "Oh, I don't believe in ghosts. Yeah, I'm afraid of no ghosts," kind of thing, and like, "Oh, Wheelbarrow Man, come and get us." And my colleague Jamie, who told the story, said that she felt something just go whoosh past her face, and then there was a clonk and a scream, and running footsteps, girls running away. And that she went over there and she took her phone out of her pocket, and she had the light on, and she was kind of looking around, and there was a piece of coal from the coal chute, just that it had been thrown from the coal chute
Hilarious.
down across the basement, and it had hit the wall and bounced off.
Damn.
And she was like, she said she picked it up and she looked around and she went, "That was funny. Don't do it again." And so things like that. And then there is in the Daisy bedroom, because Mrs. Winchester had 2 bedrooms. She had the Daisy bedroom at the front of the house before the earthquake, and then she had the bedroom at the back of the house after the earthquake.
Daisy, that's the name of her niece, right? I think
Daisy. Yeah.
Daisy. Yeah.
Marion called Daisy.
Mm-hmm.
And so the Daisy bedroom is called, we call it that because there are these beautiful stained glass windows that hit the morning, when the morning light gets them, they're daisies in the windows. So they cast a daisy pattern on the floor. And so that's why it's called that. That was her room for 20 odd years until 1906. And then the whole front of the house kind of pancaked during the earthquake, and she got stuck in that room. And you can see the crowbar in the door. They knew where she was. The story goes that they couldn't find her for hours because she slept in a different room every night, and that's not true. They knew exactly where she was, and so they went up and they got her out, and they broke her out of her room.
Oh my God.
Yeah. The house was bigger. It was like, I want to say 6 stories. It's only 4 now. It had a whole extra floor, and the tower was much bigger.
Yeah.
And it had to be taken down after the earthquake. And it would have cost her, to make the repairs, it would have cost her, again, what she'd already put into that, which was a couple of $1 million. And so she just sort of opted to make the structure safe and then close off the front of the house and worked towards the back.
Wow.
Once again,
that room has sorry?
No, once again, the public forget that we had the earthquake of 1906, but
yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And it was bad. Like Google that earthquake and then look at the photographs.
It's history. Yeah. It's like
so many buildings just fell over completely.
Yeah.
Right.
It's true.
So that bedroom is haunted. It has a little girl in it, and she will imitate voices of staff.
You mean a demon? God forbid, it's a child.
Right. No.
We had a discussion about this.
Girl.
We had a discussion about this even in one of your TikToks. Well, when I did when I stitched it, some girl got on. She was like, "No, I have a demon experience. That house has demons. I saw it in the wood." And then I think you commented, you're like, "No, there's nothing demonic in that house. There's
nothing demonic in that house.
Evil." But people are like, "Well, there's children's spirit. Just because it's a spirit of a child doesn't mean it's automatically a demon." And you
well. No, I hate
doesn't-
children. So
Oh, don't hate children.
no, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
No, but
I'm just kidding.
she will pretend to be other staff members and go like, "Hey, Jamie. Hey, Christy."
Hilarious.
And you go, "Hey," and because
She's a little
thing
child that
is,
wants to
you just
mimic
scared
you.
the crap out of people by accident in that
Yeah.
house. Just walking up on people because almost every room has multiple entrances.
Right.
And so, like, I don't know if you saw the BuzzFeed Unsolved where Shane and Ryan spent the night
Oh,
in the house.
yes.
Mm.
Ryan got scared by someone coming to check on him.
Yeah.
He was literally, that was going to happen. Like, if he had chosen to stay in the witch's cap like Shane did, he would have heard somebody coming because it creaks.
Oh, wow.
But there are 4 entrances to that room, to Mrs. Winchester's bedroom. You've got the balcony entrance, which is a sunroom. You've got the bathroom entrance. You've got the parlor entrance. You've got the stairs coming up, and then you have the 2 main doors. So he was going to be freaked out by someone walking in, regardless of what
Right.
happened.
And you knew.
That was-
and you know that was about to happen.
So I was like screaming when I watched that video. I was like, "Oh my god!" And, yeah.
Now, is it true
so
that the staff would do or hold seances in the Winchester? Is that true?
Nobody knows. The staff now doesn't. We don't do things like that.
Okay.
We're not allowed to fake a seance. That was grounds for disciplinary action, possibly leading to firing.
Hear that,
because
people?
it-
You hear
it
that,
scared
everyone?
people.
I know, because that was another rumor. Oh, they do seances there. I'm like,
Yeah, no, we don't do seances. We used to do candlelight tours.
That's what I remember. Yeah,
which
people were like,
is the more fun one. Everyone likes the candlelight tours because they're late at night and we get to carry a candle. And you get to put together your own costume for that. So a lot of our staff are theater people and cosplayers.
I love it.
Or they used to be.
Please, please tell me someone dressed up as an anime character, at least.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think it was everyone's went sort of steampunk with it.
That makes sense.
Nice.
I never did that myself because I was still teaching, so I only did summer, and this was usually at Halloween.
Mm.
But yeah, a lot of costumes when during October you could dress up. It was really fun.
I love that.
So we have the little girl. We have the butler in the upstairs, friend of the house, Mr. Butler, and he actually petted my hair one day.
That was,
and I was like, "Don't touch my hair." I was like,
"Oh, girl,"
because I was at that time. I was
someone touched my hair.
Like, right. Well, I was doing this like 1940s kind of tuck and roll thing, and it had taken me forever to do.
Yeah.
Don't mess it up.
Don't mess it up. Cap done.
Tour that was taking forever. Like they were lagging so they could take videos, which isn't allowed.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing is that you can't lag because we have tours right behind us. Like sometimes, especially in the summer, they go every 5 minutes.
Oh wow.
And so I was taking them from her old room up the hallway through this little annex to her original bedroom. And there's a hallway here and a door. And you open the door and you can look back. It's like the hallway got cut in half and there's a door. So you open it and the hallway keeps going, but you can see the tour group going around. So I opened it to be kind of like, hey, I can see you taking video. I will have you escorted out. And I leaned in and I was like, all right, let's go, everybody, come on. And I'm closing the door and something just hit my hair, like ran a hand over it. And I closed the door and I was like, don't touch my hair, dude. And just a momentary kind of like, that was fine. I don't mind it if you touch my shoulder. You can tug on my dress. I'm cool with that. Don't touch my hair, but it took forever. And I had the impression of someone like chuckling, and I was like, all right. And I just kept doing the tour because what are you gonna do? And then I went out to the staff room and was like, hey, someone touched me. And they went, oh yeah, Mr. Butler. And I'm like, oh God. But you would get your hair touched, you get your dress tugged on, you could get tapped. The little girl in the Daisy bedroom will take your hand if she's scared. And since they now have an earthquake sound effect, you push a button and this huge 30-second long earthquake rumble to approximate the 1906 quake happens. Okay. And I don't think she likes it. So she'll take your hand. Let's see. I actually have notes here.
How scary is that, especially for them to relive? Yeah.
Right.
Mrs. Winchester does come through, just kind of to see what's going on. She doesn't stick around. Like she doesn't haunt the place,
Mhm.
but you will get the impression that she's there. Sometimes she smells of roses,
Yes.
and she really liked roses, rose perfume.
And that is something that Helen Mirren even said when she was shooting there. She was on location. She's like, she was asked that question, have you seen the ghost of Sarah Winchester? She's like, no, I don't think she haunts it. I think she's everywhere, but I haven't seen her.
I want to tell you about Baron and Spirit.
There we go.
As we go. They were guard dogs in the 70s and 80s.
Aww.
And they were buried on the property until fairly recently. And you could go see their little graves, Baron and Spirit. And Baron, they both haunt the front gardens. And Baron liked to jump into the fountain. And so if you're ever at the Winchester grounds and you smell a wet dog, but you don't see a dog, that's Baron. The graves have recently been dug up, and they're going to build a building over it. And everyone's furious because that's Baron and Spirit's graves. So we don't know where the bodies are. They won't tell anyone. And it's very disappointing because the house has been messed around with a lot. And it's all about money. It's not about preservation of history. It's a historic landmark. It's a state landmark, so they can't do certain things to it, but they can do other things like making an escape room, and they completely built up the front of the house again. The unfinished dining rooms. It was under construction during the earthquake, and then she left it, so it was unfinished. Well, they finished it. They and so it looks now like it would have, but not like it was.
Right.
And it's like, this is a historic home. Don't screw around with it.
Yeah.
So it's disappointing. Is basically what it comes down to, and the house doesn't like it.
Right. And it's so shocking that you think, oh, it's an historical landmark, they have to preserve it. It's like, oh, there's these weird little loopholes of capitalism that are seeping in. That's so disappointing.
Yeah, it's very sad.
Yeah,
it is. But
we used to talk more about the ground staff and the Nishiharas and the Hansons who lived on the property, and depending on the tour that you get, they still do, but it's just sort of gone Hollywood to a degree that's insulting, especially because we have Google and the internet and people talk.
Of course. Leave it to the public.
It's not hard to actually know the story.
Before we come to an end, what last words do you want to leave our listeners, to anyone listening, in regards to the Winchester that you want them to take away with? What is the takeaway with you?
The takeaway for me is that Mrs. Winchester was a good, interesting woman. And it's been she's been painted in a harsh light. And so do your research before you make assumptions about her. Because she did make a big, cool, weird house. But she did it for a reason. And so it's when you hear stories about women doing weird things, double check if that's true. And see what good they were doing. She did a lot of good. So go to the house, go check it out, go visit it. But don't go in there thinking that she was this crazy old lady, because she wasn't.
Yes, do your homework. Read Read Mary Jo Ignofo's book. Don't listen.
Oh yeah.
Believe everything that you see on the internet.
And don't watch the Ghost Adventures.
Absolutely.
No.
And the movie with Helen Mirren is not an accurate depiction.
Not even a little
not
bit.
Even close.
No.
Well, also the fact that Helen Mirren is a foot taller than Mrs. Winchester.
See,
yeah.
Well,
I wasn't able to watch the movie, so.
Well, thank you so much, Christy, for being a part of
thank
this episode on Hollywood Paranormal Podcast. Guys, if you're a Patreon member, be sure to go on our Patreon page to catch an additional bonus clip of Christy's experience living in a haunted apartment in Berlin, in Germany, guys. It is an intense story. It's really great, and that will be dedicated to our patrons. Thank you guys so much.
My dream is to be haunted by a pretzel.
Our arena schnitzel.
Not hard to do.
Thank Thank you so much, Christy, once again. Guys,
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
if you love Holly Weird Paranormal podcast, please follow us on Facebook at Holly Weird Paranormal, along with Instagram and TikTok at Holly Weird Paranormal. You can also follow us on Twitter at HWP Podcast. Please subscribe to us on Apple or Spotify. And also, if you have time, leave a little review. A 5-star rating would really, really help us out a lot. Helps us indie podcasters become a little more visible. And if you're interested in becoming a Patreon, then you can head on over to our website, hollyweirdparanormal.com, where you'll find more information about me and Bryce, other past episodes. And there is a link for our Patreon and our store page. You could get some fresh Holly Weird merch. Well, guys.
Yes.
Till next time, thank you guys so much for getting Holly Weird with us, revisiting the Winchester with Christi, or Christiane Franke. I love that. Makes it better.
Christiane Franke.
Yes. Well, guys,
Well
take care. Much love. And always remember to stay Holly Weird. Bryce, do you have anything you'd like to say to everyone?
Bye.
Bye, guys. Take care. Until next time.